Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl Crooks, Executive Director of CASCADIA International Women's Film Festival. We're so happy to have you here today with us for the panel discussion, The Backstory. But before we get to that, I'd like to first thank our major media sponsor this year, KCTS, as well as Crosscut Magazine, the Mary Redmond Foundation, and the Whatcom Arts Commission, as well as all of our other major sponsors, without whose support this festival would not have been possible. So today's discussion is the backstory with directors Julie Herlocker, who made the short film 7 a.m. Wednesday, Bonnie Discepolo, who made Graceland, and Cate Carson, who made The Plumber, all in this festival. Our moderator, we're delighted to have Rena Priest, who is one of Cascadia's short film jurors and was also recently appointed Washington State Poet Laureate. So now we'll get to the discussion, and I hope you'll enjoy the backstory. Thank you so much for coming to Cascadia.
Hello, well, so I'm very excited to speak with you all today and hear a little bit about how you came to filmmaking and to hear the backstory. So I'll just go ahead and let you talk in as you feel so moved about how you came to filmmaking.
I guess I'll go. I actually, in my high school years, was working as an actor in theater and had gotten a scholarship at the end of that. But it only ended up paying for about half of my tuition. So I joined the military at that point, and I went off and I was doing detective and intelligence work for a while, and just always found myself really wanting to go back to storytelling in some way. So I came back to the States. I was in Massachusetts and I started acting again, but I quickly realized in that area that it was really important to kind of create some of my own stories. And then I fell in love with directing, and I've been doing it ever since. So.
And how about you, Bonnie?
I also was acting, and I think that I knew that I wanted to be a director from a really young age. I was assembling the neighborhood kids and, you know, putting on plays and circuses and charging our friends and family tickets. And I started directing in high school, and then it seemed really hard once I got into college to assemble that many people. I think it seemed easier to just audition and act. So I stopped doing it for a while. And then I went to go see a movie, The Sound of My Voice, at the ArcLight by myself. I really liked indie stories and I was really into science fiction. And I saw the movie, and afterwards I was so jealous that I couldn't even go home. I just started scribbling on napkins with a pen in my purse. And I realized that I was jealous that somebody had just assembled this team of people and written and directed and produced their own thing. And I was like, oh, I need to be making my own films. But it really came out of this just paralyzing jealousy.
That's so interesting. So, and how about you, Julie?
I knew that I wanted to work in television, or pretty much always television. So I had started out in news, but you know, karmically it's bad. It's only fun when horrible things are happening to people. Otherwise it's just very rote and repetitive. And I knew I needed to get out of news. And a friend of mine said, well, you know what? Why don't you just call up the Film Commission? So before I knew it, I'm set PAing and realizing that directing at CNN was not any fun anymore. And I quit in Atlanta and just moved out to LA and, you know, climbed my way up. And I worked for a producer who said post is a great way to get into directing. You know, then life happens and you kind of find out that, you know, well, you're really, really good at post-production producing. So you just kind of go there, you raise a family, and all of a sudden, like, you know, that directing thing I was just aching to do, it's still there. It's still just eating me inside. And I asked the showrunners on a TV show I was working on NBC called Grimm, said, what do I need to do to direct an episode? And they said, well, go shoot a short. Show us you know how to move a camera. Show us you know how to work with actors. I'm like, I've been directing actors in ADR for, you know, over a decade. I know how to work with actors, no worry there. So I shot the short. They said it was great. I was the only crew member in 6 seasons, 123 episodes that earned the opportunity to direct. And I've been hooked ever since. Frankly, I was hooked after the short. I came home and told my husband, I better make this work or I have a very expensive hobby. This short just has been, you know, confirming that I want to keep going and going. I'm prepping right now to shoot another one next month. So it's once you do it, you can't turn back.
Awesome. Yep. True. So, what were some challenges that you've had to overcome in your journey to where you are now as filmmakers? Yeah, let's go with that. What were some hurdles that you had to clear? Memorable.
I'll go first. I think the hardest thing that I had to overcome was money. I was waitressing full time and trying to figure out how I was going to get the financial resources to make things on my own. It just seemed mind-boggling, and sort of technology caught up and just squirreling things away and meeting people and asking for favors, but figuring out how to get the financial resources without any help was by far the biggest thing that I feel like I had to overcome, sort of psychologically and practically.
For me, I think being in New England when I started and not being in a huge filmmaking community. I mean, there is a small filmmaking community there, where there's not as much infrastructure, and you're not really connecting with a lot of industry folks there to help guide you. And when you're first starting out, you're just winging everything and going, okay, I guess this is how you direct, and you learn and you study things and you study films and take classes and do whatever you can at that point to figure out how to make a movie. And you just have to keep making them until you figure more out. And every time you figure more out. But I think starting from that place was a challenge, and we recognized, my producing partner and I, who's also my husband, Jay Everly, we needed to move to a place. We'd done a bunch of shorts and things there while we were working full-time. I was still working full-time as a detective. He was still working full-time in construction management. And we were doing this full-time in all the rest of our time, you know? And so it was managing that and then trying to figure out how to get into the industry now that we've had some practice and learned some things and learned how to work with crew and actors and all of that. And then we had to move out here to LA. So, you know, giving up stability, I think, is also a hard thing to do if you have something that pays the bills and you're going into this scary thing where you don't know where your next paycheck is going to come from. I think that's a challenge for a lot of filmmakers.
Yeah, all of this sounds so very familiar, and it makes me realize, Rena, that almost everything's a hurdle. You know, first there's money, then it's finding, you know, collaborators that you trust and crew that can come through for you and show up on the day, even if you're only, you know, paying in food, really. But then you get it made, and then there's the hurdle of getting into the film festivals, which, you know, we're all thrilled to be here. I know that. And, you know, then what goes life beyond this project? What's the next one? What's the next one? But it's problem solving. I mean, that's what directing is problem solving. So every hurdle is an opportunity to go, okay, how do we fix this? You know, how do we get to where we want to be? And what is that and why? And once you know those answers, you kind of figure out your path.
Yeah. So you each mentioned previous jobs that you've had, and I wanted to ask, to get a little bit about the backstory in that, what is something that you have learned in those roles or in those positions that has served you in filmmaking, that has served you well, that you've been able to carry forward into this work and utilize on a regular basis? either from being a detective or working for CNN in reporting or in.
Well, I'll jump in right now and say, my work was in episodic television post-producing, so it prepared me really well. I worked, from prep through finish, and so that part I knew. What prepared me that is completely opposite of your question, Rena, is being a mom, because it's one of those things that I've realized that if you can raise kids and figure out how to manage them at their different stages, you can handle crew and you can certainly handle actors. It's like the psychology that's needed is really helpful.
Definitely. That's a big job. Yeah.
From my perspective, I went into boot camp at 17. I turned 18 in boot camp. It was right on the cusp of 9/11, and it was during operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, and I was put in a foreign country and with host nationals, and it was a crazy experience. And so being thrown into that kind of environment at a young age and having to grow up really quickly and navigate that, I think helped prepare me for anything that might arise on a set. And I also very quickly naturally fell into leadership roles through the military work, and later when I got out in my detective work, I was always training, part of training departments and leading, and I had to also learn how to train and lead people who were years ahead of me. And I had a lot of smarts, and I had a lot of will and passion for what I was doing, and so it just became a matter of giving people confidence that I could do that. And so I think all of those really helped transition me into directing. It's just directing different kind of people, and I dealt with a lot of people, from the victim to the villain to the hero. That really gave me a clear understanding of humanity and what people are really like. And so pulling that into with my actors and having been an actor myself, I think that was really helpful in bringing those things out in my work.
Those are both great answers. I feel like I don't know if I have one sort of cohesive great answer, but the two things that jump to mind that have been helpful sort of in the journey to directing is, first of all, being an actor myself. I did do intensive actor training at Boston University and the Moscow Art Theater School, and then working as an actor for a long time before I transitioned to directing. I do think I learned a lot of skills about what to say to actors that gives them fun, playable actions, like something they can actually do in a scene. That has been helpful just language-wise. And then in order to support being an actor, I had tons of really bizarre, odd jobs. Like I worked in labs at Harvard and MIT. I've been teaching assistants. I tutored Russian kids. I was a bikini poolside waitress. I just did all of these crazy things. And so I think I just had a lot of experience dealing with a variety of people, transitioning between how I was going to deal with something, juggling, logistics and problem solving. But yeah, not so clear, but just like a little smorgasbord of everything that I'm now like, oh yes, when I was working at Harvard in the Mars Research Lab, I know this. But from bikini poolside waitressing, I'm used to dealing with really drunk, belligerent people. So.
Those were all great answers. Thank you. And so now I think I'd like to hear about the backstory about your particular projects. Bonnie, in Graceland, you mentioned in the director's statement, you mentioned that you have all of the rights to the film, and then you to the music in the film, and then you describe how that works. And I thought that was just ingenious. That was some really great creative problem solving at work there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I am so glad you asked. So Graceland is the story of a mom and her child who believes he's the reincarnation of Elvis Presley. And so we went way down the line with the film, you know, had the script, had the funding, a shoot date, a cast. And it really was very dependent on the music of Elvis Presley. And then before, and I talked to other filmmakers, you know, this woman who used Blue Christmas at Sundance a couple of years ago, and I wrote to her well in advance, and I said, you know, was it difficult to get the rights to Blue Christmas? And she was like, no, the Elvis Presley estate was great. They gave me a really discounted rate, and they, you know, they gave me all the festival rights for something like 3 years. And I was like, great. I talked to the producers, and I was like, we're going to be fine. It'll be like $1,000. We'll just pay the Elvis Presley estate. And then when it came time to get the rights, the Elvis Presley estate said no. They did not approve of my film. They didn't approve of the themes. And not only could I not have the rights to the song I wanted, they would have nothing to do with the movie, and I could have no rights to any Elvis music. And so this is where my tenacity comes in. I was like, well, I'm making this movie, so what's the solution? And so we found 2 songs. One is Blue Suede Shoes, which is originally a Carl Perkins song, and Carl Perkins and Sun Records still had the rights. So I scrambled, and I was like, okay, so we recreate the song completely. We, you know, re-record all of the music. We find an Elvis impersonator. We get the Elvis impersonator to sing the song. We remix it, remaster it, build the song from scratch, and make it sound like Elvis. And we did it. For both Blue Suede Shoes and Amazing Grace, which is an iconic Elvis song, but happens to be in public domain. So, you know, we've shown this movie to people, and no one knows it's not Elvis, and they shouldn't. Like, it's great that they don't. That's the goal. But it's the thing that I'm most proud of. It was the hardest. Like, our music supervisor, Barry J. Neely, like, made it sound just like Elvis tracks in pandemic, you know, recording, having musicians from around the country make tracks, send them to him. This guy, Lance Lipinski, a singer out of Austin, Texas, recorded the vocals in Austin, sent the tracks to us. Everything was done remotely. And, you know, except for you, Rena, nobody knows it's not Elvis. So thank you for asking.
Brilliant. I would never have known. I read the director's statement and I thought, oh, wow, that's some really clever.
It was so hard. And yeah, and if you knew it wasn't Elvis, then we wouldn't have succeeded. So
make it happen for sure.
Great. And so, Julie, the backstory around your film, 7 a.m. Wednesday morning. It was a fairly intense film to watch, and I in reading your director's statement, I thought that your intention behind it was really beautiful. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the motivation was for creating this film?
Well, the story was created by somebody I went to high school with, who I ran into at a high school reunion, and said, you know, I need to shoot another short film. And I'm not a writer. I am. Pandemic helped change that. I've been writing and studying for the last 14 months. But he came up with this. I said, these are the things I need, and I want something that's, you know, emotionally driving. And he came back with a story that had to do with a friend of his who was a high school therapist who worked outside off the campus. And this is based on loosely on something that she went through. And he started wondering, what's it like if you're in in therapy with somebody and you don't know if they could hurt you. And I started thinking about, you know, I've got, kids that are teenagers. What happens when things are rough for teenagers at home? What happens if they aren't in therapy? And what happens if they are? Does that give them a way to work through the crap they have at home if the therapist is the only adult they can really talk to? How important that is? And it's just like the little things. I worked really hard in my casting to find kids that anybody could relate to, you know, whether it's the the girl with the green hair, or, you know, the kid who looks like just, you know, your average, little young, small little Jewish guy. It's, you know, therapy is nothing to be ashamed of. And if you need help, and there are so many problems that kids are dealing with now, way beyond what covers in my film. But I think the film brings up the opportunity, things that I think need to be talked about. Easy access to guns and what that does to kids. And I think it's really important to talk about what happens when you bring somebody into your family that is right there, and the impact they can have on your kids. So yeah, put all that together, and Chris gave me a great launching pad, and then I kind of took these things that mattered to me and wove them in.
Yeah, it was a fairly intense short. It was, I think, what, 6 minutes? Or
9 minutes.
9 minutes. 9
Yeah.
minutes long. And I feel like I was kind of on the edge of my seat there, hoping everything was going to be okay, because, you know, we see these stories and it so often is not, but it was really engaging. It was.
Well, I'm so glad. And I will tell you, it's my work with the Alliance of Women Directors does a Works in Progress program. And I took my rough cut in, and it was almost 15 minutes long because it had a whole lot of setup. And which, you know, like if you're doing a full episode of television, it's great. Let's set the people, let's set the tone, let's set the thing. And it's the realization, no, in short film, you have to come in the middle of the story. So it's like, oh, there went the beginning. And so I'm glad to hear that it had you the whole time. That was the point. So thank you.
Yeah. And so Cate, in your director's statement, you mentioned about part of the motivation of making your film was to show how one person really can make a big difference. Do you want to share a little bit more about that and how you incorporated that message into your film?
Sure. Well, we filmed in September of 2020, right during COVID, especially here in LA. And that decision did not come lightly. You know, we had been talking about doing a short film that represented more, and I keep saying we because my producing partner, but we and all of us that were part of it, all 9 of us, wanted to do something that really said, this is kind of who we are, and this is more representative of what we can do right now. And after things started happening, I think that theme, in addition to everything going on with COVID, everything going on socially and politically in the United States at the time, especially last year, you kept hearing these individual stories of people kind of being heroic in their own way. And I think being a hero is just, there's so many different definitions of that. And at the very core of that, it's just somebody who sees that there is something wrong and they try to fix it. They try to do what they can to contribute to that wrong in some way. And it may seem very small, but a lot of times those little actions can have big impact. And so I come across this story of Rena Sendler, who was a woman during World War II who had created this network of other people who were rescuing, I think they ended up rescuing over 2,500 children and babies out of Warsaw during that time. And the thing that struck me so deeply was that every single time you're going into that lion's den, and every single time it's a huge risk for your own safety, and it does not get better. It's going to be that way tomorrow. It's going to be that way the next day, and you just have to keep doing it. And it's these small things that add up to a really big impact in that vein. And I think, you know, when we're talking about our healthcare workers or any of the other people involved in some of our socio or political movements last year, you just keep seeing these actions and they keep going into the lion's den and making a big difference. And so we thought that would be really timely to do this film right now. I know there's been a lot of different films about World War II and the Holocaust and all of that. And we really wanted to show it in a different light as well, because ours is more adventure suspense. than it is a really dramatic take on those events. And it's really centered around her rescue operation.
Yeah, thank you. And Bonnie, in your film, there was a line that I really that I really liked. Well, it was a little scene. It was with the school counselor and the parents. And she says, well, first of all, the timeline totally doesn't work. Elvis Presley, and then she tells them, you know, the date that he died, and the parents are like, that's what you're worried about, is the timeline of reincarnation? And I thought that was pretty great. It was a really effective way of demonstrating how different people will react to different challenging challenges to their belief systems, right? And I wanted you to talk a little bit about your motivations for making the film.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That actually, the parent-teacher conference scene is, I think, my favorite scene in the film, specifically because of that. My motivations for making the film, whew, there's so many. It really, like, the number one thing is that I had been making a horror feature when the idea for Graceland came to me. And I think the number one thing was, I thought to myself, the next thing I do, I want to bring good into the world. And Graceland was really about creating something that was joyful to make, but felt like was bringing love and compassion and empathy and understanding into the world. So I think that was the main driving force behind it, was just like spreading love.
And I feel like that's something that really ties these three very different stories together, is that intention, just coming from such a beautiful place. And so I wanted to thank you all for telling these stories. They're all very important, and they're handled so skillfully and so beautifully. And so thank you for sharing your voice, your creative voice with us. Is there anything that you feel is important for your viewers to know? What do you want them to know when they go into viewing your film?
Well, filmmaking is always a challenge. It doesn't matter how many people you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many resources you have. It will always be a challenge. I will say, though, that for this particular short, because we did film in September 2020 and it was in the middle of COVID in LA, we, in pre-production, were very cognizant of that and knew that we had to limit the number of people that were going to be in the film, the number of people behind the camera that were going to be working on the film, and really had to reorient ourselves. I've worked with small budgets in few resources before. This was definitely a different challenge. We were doing a period film during World War II, so we had to really find some key locations that would support that. And we all took on multiple roles. I was the writer, director, DP, production designer, costume designer. I had to do a lot more than I traditionally would, and I've had experience doing some of those things in the past. But, you know, you miss out on some of that collaboration, which sucks. It's always really fun to collaborate with your department heads and to have that extra voice that is contributing really unique and cool ideas. So that was one challenge. And then another was just the few amount of people that we had. I think on our heaviest day, we filmed over the course of 4 days. 2 of them were half days for a 6-minute film. And that's another thing, is taking those kind of considerations into account. When you lack the number of people, you know you're going to have to spend more time. And so on our heaviest days, I think we had a total of 9 people for the first 3 setup hours, and then we were back down to 6 on our crew. And so, you know, I give a lot of credit to all of our crew, and I really just want to highlight them because they were all friends of mine. of ours that came on to help with the film, and they were all just as passionate about making this film. And you can tell with the end result that even though we had those limitations, everybody that was involved in it was really, really excited about being there, and they did a great job. So I couldn't be happier with who we were able to bring in on board, both on crew and cast, because we had to limit that as well.
Well, they did a really great job. It was the look of the film was really distinct and very it was excellent. It was perfect. It was just like in terms of fitting with the story, and it was seamless, you know.
Oh, thank you so much.
Enter that
Glad to hear
world
that.
and be there. So I would never have known. So thank you. And how about you, Julie?
You know how I said that we had to lose the top of the film and just start right in? The things you would have known if I had left that in, which was one of those things, it's like you have to give up the baby sometimes to you know, anyway. We had to drop the bit where it is explained that in the therapist's office, the door does not properly latch and lock. And if you miss that, you kind of want to yell at the characters for not just going over and locking the door. So we tried to set it up as best we could editorially, but that would have been helpful. And some people also get a little confused because they don't understand that her office is a block away from the high school campus. So if you know those things before you watch it, I think leaves a lot of the questions behind.
That's interesting. I would not have. So, you know, I'm like a big self-critic in terms of whenever I do any kind of public speaking or anything. And then I'll talk to friends about it after and they'd say, I would never have known. So this is one of those cases where we would never have known.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you.
And Bonnie?
I usually really don't want to tell anybody anything before seeing a film. Like I hate seeing trailers. I'm like, don't tell me anything. So I'd say, like, you know, just watch the movie and enjoy. I think the main thing is just like have fun and have an open heart is what I, you know, like people to think before they go in. Hopefully they keep thinking about it, trying to figure out if he was really Elvis.
So we have time for one more question, and I'm just going to go ahead with the obvious, which is what is on your horizon? What is the next project that you have planned? And we'll just start in that same order with Cate.
Well, I was very fortunate this year to be named one of 9 fellows in Blackmagic Collective's Future Directors of Studio Features.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
That's huge.
So it's been really a wonderful experience so far. We're meeting a lot of people, and it came at a good time because my producing partner and I are developing a feature, our primary focus feature here about, it's an adventure suspense feature about a sort of a relationship between a niece and her uncle. They are estranged, and this sort of little cute creature that comes into their lives, this prehistoric creature. So we're working on that. I'm very excited about it. I think it's a good time for it. The theme of it is really dealing with connection, and we all could use a lot of that coming out of COVID for sure. And it is, as Bonnie said, you know, wanting to put something good and fun and joyous and not without its, you know, of course, conflict out into the world, and being something that a lot of people could really like, you know, being universally themed and whatnot. So I'm pretty excited about it. The challenge now just becomes all the next steps of finding your team and finding the money, and we'll see how it goes.
Julie?
Well, the pandemic was challenging, and it kind of put the brakes on everything I was doing pretty quickly. I had been selected by the DGA for their Director Development Initiative as a protege, and we were supposed to, thank you, we were supposed to graduate right in March, oops. So that's been on hold. We're hoping to have the big launch coming up in the next couple of months, which will hopefully get the episodic wheels turning again. But I spent the pandemic developing, working with writers, working on my own stuff. I've got 2 TV series that I'm working on with other writers. One is a dramedy, a half-hour, one set in New York. The other one is a dramedy, hour-long, set in Texas, both with fantastic writers that we're just starting to go out with now. I have 3 different short films that I've written, and one of them I'm starting to shoot next month, which is very short. But it's a little high-tension thriller set in the woods. That just because I really, this time of year, it's so beautiful, and I really want to go out and get some scope after shooting this last short, which was all very contained. You know, but like Cate said, it's pandemic shooting still. So tiny crew, 2 cast members, and exteriors, which is great for the fresh air.
My Graceland writing partner, Trevor Omunson, and I are working on the Graceland feature.
Yay!
Which is like if Little Miss Sunshine and John Waters had a road movie baby.
That's one I want to see, Bonnie.
Me too. I'll watch for that one. So, it looks like we have time for even one more question, which I'm happy about because I wanted to ask, and it just slipped my mind, about how the different associations and just the different, well, you mentioned the Black Magic Association, and then there was a women's filmmaking
Alliance of Women Directors.
Alliance of Women Directors, yeah. How has being plugged into those types of resources helped you in navigating this career?
I'll jump in because I brought up the AWD earlier. The Works in Progress program is fantastic. That's actually, Cate, if I may, and if you don't want me to say this, they can cut it out. But,
no, go ahead.
I saw Cate's film, The Plumber, at a Works in Progress program for the Alliance of Women Directors, which is where I got my help on my 7 a.m. Wednesday short.
I'm so bummed I missed yours. I must have not been there that week.
But they're an amazing organization, and AWD right now is doing so much to support women, especially diverse women who really have just not had the opportunity to make the connections in this business. And everything about this business, as we know, is connections and who you know and who they can introduce you to. So these organizations are huge. Film Fatales is another one that I have so much respect for. I'm a member of, and they do incredible programs. There's, of course, Women in Film, which is amazing in what they offer opportunity-wise. But the one I've been really surprised about, because they offered incredible programs during the pandemic, is Women's Weekend Film Challenge. And are you familiar with those?
I just went to their last one, yeah.
It's incredible. These 2 women have come together and created this group where it started in New York and now it's in LA. You try and get on a team, and if you're selected for a team, you have a weekend to write, direct, and finish a short film. But during the pandemic, they've been putting together these unbelievably solid panels with really great guests. And it's been an unbelievable wealth of information and support. And I just can't say enough great things about it. And I should also do a shout out to the Director Development Initiative at the DGA, because they've been really awesome too.
And on my end, echoing some of what she said as well, but then I'd also like to bring up Black Magic Collective. That was actually also our first stop on the festival circuit. We initially were kind of structuring, we had 2 versions of this film. We had a shorter version that we did specifically for that festival because it, the Black Magic Collective Film Festival, because it had some really great prizes, some really great jurors, and we wanted to be able to submit to that one. We ended up winning the Grand Jury Award at that festival. And through that, I actually became more familiar with the Black Magic Collective, and have become since a lot more involved with what they're doing over there, because I really, really believe in action and not just education. Education is great, but at this point in I'm assuming all of our careers, what we really need is action, and to be able to be supported into being hired and directing. And that is really the core tenet of Black Magic Collective. They do a lot of educational stuff, and they have varied levels of filmmakers, but they, you know, especially Jen Page, the executive director, and John K. Parento, it is presented by Black Magic Design. It's sponsored by Black Magic Design, which makes cameras and software and things like that for the industry. They really wanted to create something that was focused on getting people to that next level. And I think they're successfully doing it. Last year, they had the Future Women of TV initiative, and they met with over 50 executives and directors in the industry, and they are now getting one-on-one meetings, representation, and all of this other stuff. And the initiative we're in this year, I mean, we're meeting with incredible people, and it's really about making things happen. So I would also encourage people, it's free to sign up, blackmagiccollective.com. Everything they do is free. They want it to be accessible to people because they really want to help people that have not had maybe the right connections or right resources to get to where they are. So yeah, I love it. And I love the other organizations as well.
That's huge. Awesome.
These all sound great. I don't have as much experience with the programs. I am a member of Film Fatales, which is great, and you know has really helped me with narrowing down what the opportunities are, what to apply to, just sort of have a resource of like gathering all of the information, because it is hard to sort through what all of the opportunities are. Yeah, so, they sound great.
Well, thank you all for coming today, and this has been really lovely speaking with you and hearing about the backstory and hearing about your projects and your work. I'm looking forward to seeing films from all of you in the future, and thank you again for the work that you've shared with Cascadia.
Thank you so much, Rena.
This is great, Rena. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody at Cascadia. I'm so excited to be a part of this festival. Thank you.